Cinematic trailers are the industry's go-to standard for showing off a game that's still early in development, but far enough along that press hype can now begin. Everyone knows on some level that these trailers are not indicative of what will be in the actual game, but some are far more deceitful than others. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 awesome video game trailers, and the game sucked. Number 10, No Man's Sky. Never let it be said that Hello Games doesn't know how to pitch its ideas. The trailer for No Man's Sky that first released during the 2014 E3 showcase promised the entire universe and everyone bought in. It positioned itself as being essentially Minecraft but on the grandest scale imaginable. A game solely about space exploration and discovery instead of conquest and warfare. Wrapping up with a perfect quote by Carl Sagan, the gaming public was left utterly stupefied by what they'd seen, and thus the wait began. No Man's Sky was not a bad game when it was released, and it's only gotten better as the years have gone by, but due to a mix of the usual game press hyperbole that all studios do and other issues, such as their entire office flooding, the No Man's Sky that came out on August 9th of 2016 was not the game that was promised. The universe of the original build of NMS was remarkably dry and empty. While there was stuff to do, it was so reliant on the RNG the whole game is built around that players would go hours without encountering anything. It was definitely something resembling the game that was promised and would be eventually delivered in the coming years, but that first impression left a very bad taste in folks' mouths. Number 9, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. The cinematic trailer for Force Unleashed 2 actually does manage to capture the tone and story of the game. The trailer features Starkiller walking down a hallway as voices from the previous game play in his mind. The more they play, the more angry and anxious Starkiller becomes, causing his Force powers to run amok, tearing the hallway to shreds. Finally, the voice of Juno Eclipse slices through the myriad of voices, calming him enough to rein in his powers. Roll title and release date, and boom, you got yourself a winner. While the trailer was good at conveying the overall mood and story of the game, it of course failed to warn audiences that Force Unleashed 2 would be a failure to recreate God of War. You know, instead of a failure to recreate Devil May Cry like the first one was, with forgettable linear hallway levels and writing that just flat out couldn't compare to the original. And mind you, the original was okay at best, so that's a problem. Number 8, OVERKILL'S The Walking Dead. OVERKILL'S The Walking Dead game had an interesting idea with its ad campaign, where they would make a full cinematic trailer for each character. These trailers got a lot of fans of the show and comic hooked thanks to their rich atmosphere and brutal depiction of the universe it was adapting. It was a depiction of the world that the more successful Walking Dead series by Telltale couldn't really achieve with their engine. The game that came out wasn't bad necessarily, but it wasn't even half the game the trailers promised. While the trailers showed The Walking Dead, the game was nakedly determined to be some inhuman hybrid of Left 4 Dead and World War Z, the movie version. And unfortunately, Overkill was not very good at recreating the anarchic zombie fighting of Left 4 Dead, and the writing, while not terrible, wasn't enough to justify the shallow gameplay that surrounded it. A shame too, since a fully open world survival-based Walking Dead game could absolutely work. This just wasn't it. Number 7, DC Universe Online. This underwhelming but admirably stubborn MMO that refuses to die made waves when it was first announced thanks to its cinematic trailer. The trailer featured the secret society led by Lex Luthor, ultimately conquering the Justice League, with Luthor even getting to lay the final blow on Superman. Only for his actions to be immediately rewarded with Brainiac coming down to invade the now undefended Earth. The trailer ends with the reveal that this is being relayed to the Justice League by the now repentant Lex of the future, who tells them they need to prepare for what is coming. A bold as hell mission statement for an MMO, so much so that it was the opening cinematic for the game for many years. DC Universe Online just wasn't up to snuff compared to contemporaries like World of Warcraft. Although it's managed to survive, even getting regular updates to this day, including an upcoming ground-up graphical update, it just never managed to get people invested. A lot of this, to be fair, is likely due to lack of marketing. If you know about the game, it's probably because somebody told you. WB has left this game out to dry for years, and why they even keep the servers running at this point is anyone's guess. Number 6, Destiny. One of the most legendary, madcap, and chaotic game development stories was momentarily covered up by a truly magnificent trailer directed by Jon Favreau. Bungie's fanbase, made up entirely of people who'd grown up on the company's military shooter magnum opus Halo, didn't know what to expect from its big follow-up. Needless to say, the trailer for Destiny, with its operatic, almost whimsical atmosphere and themes of exploration and discovery, left them all in awe. This promised to be a departure from Halo in the best way possible. But we all know the punchline to that gag, don't we? While the franchise has found its footing with Destiny 2, the only live service game to actually pay off financially, the original was a disaster. Development was a nightmare, and its launch was riddled with problems, ranging from the mundane, casting celebrities who fell flat as voice actors, to the bizarre, nixing the entire story campaign right before launch. It ultimately paid off with the sequel, but Destiny utterly failed to capture the wonder proposed by its initial trailer. Number 5. CYBERPUNK 2077. CYBERPUNK 2077 was one of the most built-up video games in the entire industry in recent memory. It wasn't until 2018 when proper gameplay trailers started being shown off. All of them were fantastic, showing the game as everything those years of waiting had promised. Complex RPG mechanics, gorgeous visuals, and Keanu Reeves. How could this possibly go wrong? Well, at least upon launch, the game was a buggy, barely playable mess for one thing. While recent patches have cleaned the game up to better resemble the game we all thought we'd be getting, that original release lives in infamy, and the game has yet to fully live it down. The glitches were so wild that for a lot of people, they stopped being aggravating and just became funny. While the game certainly has its fans now, myself among them, it's hard to deny the failure that was those first few weeks. Number 4. Fallout 76. Fallout 76's trailer was so good it got Gen Z into John Denver. Country Road straight up became a meme after that original trailer dropped, simply by the sheer strength of it being a damn catchy tune. And even barring that, the idea of a multiplayer Fallout game potentially taking the settlement building mechanics of 4 to its logical conclusion as you patrol the wasteland with your friends and build up your own massive settlement was a tantalizing prospect. Of course, the idea that you could get your hands on your own nuclear warheads and drop them on other players was an idea too ultra-violent to pass up. Well, it was definitely a multiplayer Fallout game. It was definitely one of those. But as for the quality, I think we all know how that song and dance went. Regardless of the quality of life improvements made in the years since, Fallout 76 has proven to be an utter failure on pretty much every level. The game is practically deserted, it doesn't take nearly enough advantage of the idea of multiplayer building mechanics as it could have, and the glitches speak for themselves. Number 3. Dead Island. The trailer for Dead Island is one of the best cinematic trailers for a game out there. The trailer focuses on a family on vacation on the island of Banoi, where the zombie outbreak is about to begin. The rest of the trailer is just the family struggling to stay alive, the viewer quickly becoming invested in this young family as they try to avoid an entire island that wants them dead. Definitely a great setup for a harrowing survival horror game, but how did the game itself follow it up? The answer, according to Deep Silver apparently, was to nix the entire concept the trailer set up, including all the characters established in the trailer, in favor of a more generic band of highly trained badasses. Talk about blowing a good thing. The game itself is fine, if a bit rote, but the characters are just not that interesting, and you don't care about them nearly as much as the family shown in the trailer. Not the most dishonest trailer out there, but still a letdown. Number 2. Assassin's Creed Unity. A running gag with Assassin's Creed is that the better the trailer, the worse the final game. Assassin's Creed 2, forgettable trailer, awesome game. Meanwhile, Assassin's Creed Unity's trailers popped the off, brilliantly showing off the game's characters, enemies, and revolutionary tone with bombastic aplomb. The Ezio trilogy was well behind us by this point, and Black Flag had brilliantly refined what 3 set up. Seeing the trailers for Unity promising another radical but interesting shift in the AC formula, as well as taking fans to one of the most interesting periods in European history, it was all too tantalizing idea to pass up. And then the game came out. Unity is by far the most infamous entry in the Assassin's Creed series to date, a broken, buggy mess of a game filled with predatory microtransactions, and a nothing plot that fails to take full advantage of the time period it's set in. Top all that off with people bringing up how the game has 4 identical male protagonists and not a single woman, and Ubisoft being, well, Ubisoft in response, and you get the Assassin's Creed game that even most hardcore fans won't stick up for. Number 1. Aliens Colonial Marines. everything about this game's marketing, down to the last YouTube banner ad, was an outright lie. It's legitimately impressive how effectively dishonest the ad campaign was for this infamous flop of a game. The trailers obviously did everything in their power to sell people on the idea of taking up arms as one of the Colonial Marines working for Weyland Yutani, going head to head with the Xenomorph Scourge. Dripping with military machoism and sci-fi shoot-'em-up goodness, when Gearbox followed up with gameplay trailers, it looked even better. Surely this would be a win for both Gearbox and the Alien IP as a whole. It's legitimately hilarious that most of the bugs that came about in the final release of Colonial Marines were the fault of one typo in one line of code. Removing it in the PC version of the game tightens the whole thing right up. Shame then that even without that, the game is still just flat out bad. The guns have no kick in them, the story reeks of the worst kind of fanfiction, the Xenomorphs are nowhere near as interesting as enemies as they should be, and the military machoism posturing lacks even the bare amount of charm that it had in the trailers. It's impressive about how much of a bald-faced lie the marketing for this game was. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other awesome video game trailers that resulted in a game that kinda sucked. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account, where I'm @JessMcDonald. But make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.